And so that's what I do now as a dietitian. I've kind of evolved and started my own private practice with kind of that base. And we'll talk about my philosophy, like you said, a little bit more. But for me, I just found that, oh my gosh, there's got to be another way than this one size fits all cookie
Mm-hmm.
cutter meal plan. There's a lot of research out there. We know that 75% of all diets, or not, sorry, 95% of all diets fail, right?
Right.
And
Right.
I think it's because we go against our intuition and what we feels right.
This episode of the Smart Athlete Podcast is brought to you by Solpre, skincare for athletes. Whether you're in the gym, on the mats, on the road, or in the pool, we protect your skin so you're more comfortable in your own body. To learn more, go to solpre.com. Welcome to the Smart Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Funk. My guest today is the host of the Fit Friends Happy Hour podcast, so you've got plenty of content to listen to her after this episode. She's a registered dietitian nutritionist, which I'm going to ask about clarification on what that is here in a second. And she's a certified personal trainer and fitness instructor. Welcome to the show, Katie Hake.
Good morning, good afternoon, whatever time we decided it is. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, crossing time zones, it's always like, what time is it for everybody? Do you have people on your podcast very often? I know I listened to one episode you had a guest on, but it seems like a lot of episodes are by you. Do you have people on very often?
Yeah, we do. We do a combination of both. So I typically bring on experts in both nutrition, fitness, a little bit of lifestyle, kind of a combination of things.
Mm-hmm. What's the biggest like time zone gap you've had to deal with so far?
Probably Pacific
Okay.
time. I work with a lot of people over in California, so that can get, like, for example, this evening I have a call at 9 p.m. and I'm
Mhm.
like, it's so late for me, but that's the end of the workday for a lot of
Yeah.
people on the West Coast. So
Yeah. That's not too bad. I've had a few people in Europe, so we've had like 8 or 9 hours between us. So like I'm getting up and recording at, I don't know, 6, 7 in the morning, and then it's like 5, 6 o'clock for them. We're just like trying to figure out the best way to make it happen. So a
yeah.
couple of Europeans, and then also um, one lady who just happened to be in Europe for the summer, and it's kind of an interesting. I'll call it a profession, but it's kind of an interesting hobby profession when you're trying to schedule with people like around the globe.
Right. Not most areas have to deal with that.
Yeah, yeah. Unless you're in like really high like business, like international business or something. Um, so I do want to ask about your credentials and clarification on this. I know what a registered dietitian is, and I've met nutritionists. What is a registered dietitian nutritionist? I don't think I've seen that all put together before.
Yeah, so everybody, pretty much anybody can call them, you could call yourself a nutritionist, right?
Okay.
Anybody can, you know, take a course online or, read a couple books and declare themselves as a nutritionist. But so every dietitian is a nutritionist, but every nutritionist is not a dietitian. So the
Okay.
biggest difference is that in order to become a registered dietitian, you have to attend an undergraduate program at an accredited school across the country or across the world
Mhm.
that specializes in kind of these different areas of nutrition. And then after that, you're able to apply for an internship program. So it's a matching program, almost like how doctors apply to med school. It's
Mhm.
kind of the same idea. You get accepted into this program where you complete typically around 1,200 hours in all these different areas of nutrition. So community nutrition, clinical nutrition in a hospital type setting. Sometimes you're working in food, in like food service, like in schools or restaurants, and then kind of an area of expertise that you are passionate about or you care about. So after you complete all that, you do all your coursework, then you're eligible to sit for the national exam. So
Mhm.
it's by the CDR. I always mess this up. The Commission of Dietetic Registration. So kind of this big overarching organization. So you're able to actually apply and sit for your exam to become a registered dietitian. Now, in addition to that, a lot of different states kind of have their own rules. So I'm also considered a licensed dietitian. So for at least in the state of Indiana, in order to practice, and prescribe nutrition, almost like medical management, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I work with a lot of people who have tube feedings, or, another area I work in is with children and adults who have these kind of inborn errors of metabolism, and can
Mm-hmm.
only, have to follow very specific diets, or they could die. I mean, like that, like
Right.
that's extreme, but
Right.
so then you have to take your kind of get licensed in the state that you're in. So there's a lot more steps and kind of continuing education and things like that to be a registered dietitian compared to just a nutritionist. So that was a long-winded answer of the difference
No, no,
between
no.
the
That's
two.
that's okay. So here's my kind of point of clarification, I guess, is that can anybody who's a registered dietitian, could they use the label dietitian nutritionist?
Correct. That is
Okay.
that is something that's a little bit newer in our field. Registered dietitian or registered dietitian nutritionist, the two gonna kind of get used hand in hand, because we found that in the industry there's so many people using nutritionist. So we kind of have the option to add that on the end to kind of
Okay.
clarify to the public, hey, I'm a nutritionist, but I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, right? Like uh,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. It's more. I'll call it a more of a marketing thing. That's not in like a superfluous sense, but in like a clarification sense of like, hey, this is what I do, so people aren't confused about what your job actually is.
Absolutely.
Okay, okay. That's why I was like, I didn't know if there was like a subspecialty within being a dietitian that somehow added that label. That's kind of what I was after. I was just like, I don't
Yeah.
know if you were like, oh yeah, I specialized in such and such, and then because just like, and I don't know, I'm gonna butcher this, but there's varying degrees of nurses, like kind of base nurse, and there's the nurse anesthetist, and there's like all these different like subspecialties of nursing. I didn't know if it was like that.
Yeah, yeah. There are different area specialties and kind of additional certifications that you can get as a dietitian. But that term, yeah, RD or RDN, those two are used interchangeably.
Okay, okay. Um, so I kind of want to get a little bit more background on you. I listened to a few of your podcasts, kind of went through some of your blog posts to try to get a little bit better feel for who you are and a little bit of your background. Um, and we're going to get into your philosophy here in a minute because I like that. But can you tell us a little bit about kind of your history in exercising? I know you mentioned at some point in something I listened to about having a history of where you kind of also prescribed like the over exercising, possibly under eating kind of mentality. Can you like, give us a background on like how you got to that point and then your kind of journey from there forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, when I went and did my undergrad in both dietetics and nutrition, fitness, and health, because at the time, in high school, they always ask you, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? What are you good at?
Which is
And
a
I,
dumb question for high schoolers and 18 year
right.
olds.
So for me, all I knew, I knew that, okay, well, I really like to exercise. I guess I consider myself good at exercise, if that's even a thing.
Hmm.
And I also like food. So, well, I guess if I'm going to be in my mind, I was just going to be a personal trainer. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, I should probably know a little bit about this food piece, because the two really go hand in hand. And, I think looking back, if I knew how much chemistry was involved in nutrition, I probably would have backed out sooner, but luckily I stuck with it. And so, um, for me, my story, I guess, really began, in my undergraduate. Was personal training and teaching group fitness in college, and at the same time, right, taking these nutrition courses. And
Hmm.
I spent a semester actually studying abroad in Australia. And during that time, I had this, I was eating out all the time. I just turned 21, found alcohol and, out partying, and still finding myself like, oh my gosh, I'm eating so much. And I was trying to compensate by, exercising once, twice, multiple times during the day,
Hmm.
really conscious. And this kind of, I think, came back with me when I came back from Australia, because then I kind of realized, oh gosh, I'm back to real life. I've gained all this weight. Oh my gosh, I must have to just keep punishing myself by eating less and exercising more. And I got to this point where I was just feeling really burnt out, right? Teaching multiple group fitness classes a week, spending so much time in the gym, counting calories, all these different things. And I just got exhausted and was like, I don't have time for this. Like, there's got to be another
Yeah.
way. I don't have time, I don't have energy, I don't feel good. And so I kind of on my own, just through, listening to podcasts and just getting more in tune with my body and just taking what I've learned from these nutrition courses and asking myself, what feels good, what feels right to me in regards to both exercise and nutrition.
Hmm.
I kind of did what we now call intuitive eating. And at the time, I didn't really realize that's what it was. But now looking back, I can identify, wow, I was definitely addicted to exercise, using exercise as a punishment, you know, saying no to social settings or going out, making these decisions around food and exercise, not from a healthy space.
Hmm.
And so that's what I do now as a dietitian. I've kind of evolved and started my own private practice with kind of that base. And we'll talk about my philosophy, like you said, a little bit more. But for me, I just found that, oh my gosh, there's got to be another way than this one size fits all cookie
Hmm.
cutter meal plan. There's a lot of research out there. We know that 75% of all diets, or not, sorry, 95% of all diets fail, right?
Right.
And
Right.
I think it's because we go against our intuition and what we feels right.
Yeah. You're talking about overexercising, kind of being addicted to exercise, and sometimes I know, especially, so I come from an endurance background. I was a runner and then transitioned to triathlon post college, and it's a very like hours intensive sport,
Mhm.
um, which I think not always, and I don't even know about often, but can certainly hide the people that do want to overexercise, like are exercising way more than they need for their particular fitness level.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm curious if you have insights in how you would identify somebody like that, both externally. So say I'm looking at a crowd, of people, how do I identify? And then internally, what are some kind of like self checks, somebody might have to figure out if they fall into that group?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I can definitely identify that as well with, kind of when I was in that I guess you could say peak almost of that exercise addiction
Hmm.
was I was training for multiple, half marathons and ran a full marathon. And but I think it comes back to not so much, the hours that you're spending in the gym or training, because like completing, a triathlon or an endurance event, that's an awesome feat, right? And
Hmm.
yes, it does require hours of training, but so I think it really comes down to, for the internal, what's your motivation? Like,
Hmm.
what is your why behind doing what you're doing? Are you training for this event because you want to challenge yourself physically, you want to challenge yourself mentally, or is it because, well, I'm just going to do this as a almost like you said, a cover up, uh,
Hmm.
because I really want to lose weight, or I really want to, block out whatever else it is that is kind of motivating that drive.
Right.
From an external perspective, I think about this all the time when I have people in my group fitness classes. Things to kind of look out for. Is it somebody who's taking multiple classes in a day?
Hmm.
Are they, um, I think talking about eating disorders, that could be a whole nother topic. But
You're right.
you know, it, do you? What is this person? You definitely cannot judge an eating disorder from the outside. I think body
Hmm.
type is not just the only sign of an eating
Yeah.
disorder, but is this person in the gym multiple times a day? I remember many times in working in my gyms in undergrad, we would almost have to look out for certain students because students are in a high stress environment, and
Hmm.
you know um, they're kind of, I guess, it could be at higher risk of, we'd have girls who'd be on the elliptical for 2 hours a day in the morning and then come back in the evening for 2 hours in the night, right? Um, so externally, is this person always getting injured? Are they, you can just tell, and just by talking to them, what's the language that they're using? Are they saying, I've got to exercise because of what I ate or because of a certain body type, if that makes sense?
Hmm. So it becomes more of like a determination of motivation. I know often when I speak to kind of high level athletes, both amateurs and professionals, often the thread that runs through them is I do this because it's fun. And then kind of one of the most like enlightening thoughts I had with a gentleman I spoke to early on in the podcast. His name is Chris Douglas. I think it's episode 6. Um, he said, telling me the story about when he raced so hard he basically passed out from heat exhaustion a mile from the finish and like almost
Mm-hmm.
died.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of learned from that lesson like I do it because I have fun and I get to decide how like hard or easy I go each day. So
Mm-hmm.
like that seems like an okay mentality, but I can certainly understand there's also the mentality, especially in the endurance community, that more is better, which isn't necessarily the case.
Right.
And I think that can lead you kind of down that rabbit hole or coincide with that unhealthy idea about, exercise is punishment and I need to do it because I'm not good enough or I need to look thinner or whatever, whatever kind of like toxic mentality is going on.
Another great question someone could ask themselves is, if something happened, if something came up, let's say a friend asked me to, help them out or be with them in a tough moment. If something happened that interrupted my exercise routine, how would that make me feel? Would I be able to brush it off and pick back up the next day, and not worry about
Mm-hmm.
it? Or do I get consumed by, do I feel anxious? Do I feel,
Mm-hmm.
this almost like internal, negative, like you said, like toxic mentality or dialogue in my head about, oh no, I'm going to gain weight or blah blah blah. This is going to happen
Mm-hmm.
if I don't get my exercise in, because that was something that was for me. If I couldn't get in a full 60 minutes, or if I couldn't get in, burn this many calories, that would really mess with my mind, and I would think about that, right? And so I think
Mm-hmm.
that's another sign of you're probably not in the right brain space with
Yeah.
exercise.
Yeah. Well, this is something I kind of want. I spoke to. I don't know if you're familiar with her. I spoke with Nancy Clark last week, who.
Oh, she's a god in the
Yeah.
in the sports nutrition industry.
Yeah. So I spoke with her last week. We talked a lot about her book, um, and
I
I
have it. I
asked.
have it right on my desk over here.
Yeah, I was like, I still got it on my
Yeah.
desk. um, 'Cause my desk is an absolute mess here. Just that's how my brain space is. I have just piles of things. Um, but I asked her, did you expect to need like a psychology degree when you went into this profession? And that really seems to be kind of what's going on. So I guess I'll ask you the same thing. Like, did you expect so much to deal with people's mentalities going into it?
No, I didn't, because in my undergrad, we're learning a lot of science and just these are the facts about nutrition, and it's as simple as that. And it really wasn't until I actually took a course. It is now required in the program that I completed, but at the time I just took it as an elective. I just had extra room in my schedule. It was a nutrition counseling course, and I think for me that was really a light bulb moment of, we're dealing with people and humans and relationships, and it's so much more complex for many people, at least the population that I work with. If it's not just as simple as eat this, not that, there's a lot that goes on around food. It's something that we do every single day, whether we want to or not. It's something we all have to deal with in order to
Mm-hmm.
live. And I think as humans, there's just so much more complexity behind it that influences the choices that we make or do not make.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of want to read. I think this is a quote I pulled off of your website. So kind of leads into your philosophy. I think it. Correct me if this is not a quote, but I'm pretty sure it is. I put it in quotations. Stop chasing the numbers and do what feels good for you, not because you have to. Find joy in movement and learn why all foods fit. I think that kind of like summarizes your philosophy. So can you share a little bit about how your approach to, you know, like diet, well, even though that's a loaded term, I feel like nowadays, um, diet, eating, how that varies from kind of more traditional view.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic. I'm a diet. The word diet is in my title, dietitian, but I almost consider myself a non-diet dietitian. So,
Right.
whenever I'm working with clients, I get a lot of people who reach out to me with weight loss as a goal. And I kind of give them a disclaimer right up front is that, I'm not just going to give you a meal plan and say good luck, goodbye, because from my experience, the you're smart. Most of the people who contact me, I shouldn't say most, all of them are smart. You We all have the internet now, right? So we
Hmm.
can go online and we can find a 1200 calorie program or whatever it is in this little cookie cutter um, plans, but that doesn't address the bigger issue, right? And so I work with a lot of people more so on how do we how do we fix the relationship with food? How do we fix the way, you talk to yourself around food, and how is that influencing the choices that you make, whether it's the types of foods, the amounts of foods. I'm a firm believer that at the end of the day, you or the individual knows their body best. And yes, I can guide you and help you answer questions and facts about nutrition, but you are going to know your body best. And so I really help people to tune in to that internal wisdom that they have about
Hmm.
what their body needs. And I think so, especially with athletes, that can get so distorted
Hmm.
with all the messaging that we hear, but also just there's a lot going on. How do I fuel my body in a way that feels best when I've got all these different things to train for and this crazy schedule, and how do I make that all fit?
Hmm.